What's up? What's up? What's up? Welcome to episode 20 of Domicile, the podcast that explores the subculture of truck drivers as well as logistics professionals, bringing their stories to the masses. I'm your host, Scott Cleary. And before we kick things off, anybody, my mother, my aunt, couple friends, whoever the hell else listens to this thing, is going to recognize a new face. So first off, Paul's at ProMat. He was supposed to be here tonight, but he's dead to me right now. Or unalive, I think you're supposed to say. But
you got to censor yourself, Scott.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm, YouTube hasn't cut me off yet, so we're just going to keep pushing the envelope. But we've got Greyson Harris here. He is not only new to the show, but he's also our producer. So he's going to be adding some flair, some what's the word I'm looking for? A little pizzazz, maybe.
Pizzazz, absolutely.
Yeah, a little formality in the ways we want, not in the ways we don't. But anyways, buddy, what's up? It's good to have you. Welcome.
And I hate that I had to sacrifice Paul to make it, but it's one of those things. You gotta scratch and claw your way to the top. But no, man, it's really good to be here. I've got actually a background in journalism and radio and things like that. It was, back mainly in sports, right? So I've left the cool kids table to come join you guys. I mean, I'm really excited for it. This is going to be a cool opportunity to hang out with you and Paul if he ever shows up.
If he ever shows up, which we're just going to dock his pay. But interesting. Yeah. Interestingly enough, we were connected when you hit me up because you work at KCH, fantastic customer of Revenovas that I brought on a couple years ago. Shout out KCH, big fan. I was able to, let's just say, obviously we can't put a number on it. I killed my student loans with KCH. So big old fan.
Hey, you're welcome, man. We're all for the education.
Exactly, right. Keeping me employed and educated. So, so you were giving away some merch and you'd hit me up like, hey, big fan of Revenovas. We'd love to get you some free merch. Still waiting on that package. But and I just kind of asked you out of the blue, like, have you ever considered the podcasting and, to take it away from there a little bit? I mean, you had, sure. KCH had one.
Yeah, well, I just saw a guy on LinkedIn that looked like he needed a new shirt. And so I figured I'd reach out and just make sure that you were okay and that we were able to get that shirt to you. I will have my people reach out to the mailing shipping people, and I will track down this package, Scott. If it is the last thing I do, I will make it my absolute mission to make sure that this t-shirt arrives so that you can wear it on the show, and so that my elaborate plan just to have KCH infiltrate the show and eventually take over can be nearly complete. So believe me when I tell you, we will be getting that package to you, sir.
Beautiful.
Yeah, man. But I had a little bit of a podcasting history even at KCH. We kind of had our own show there for a little bit. And, it was one of those deals where it's like, I'm kind of a one-man band. It's kind of hard to do a full podcast while, fully running some of the social media stuff and making sure everybody's got their t-shirts. So, it's just you got to make sure that you have at least a little bit of bandwidth for yourself. So we kind of had to scrap it. And I just missed it ever since then, right? And so when you reached out and you asked just kind of out of the blue, hey, have you ever done any post-production stuff? Honestly, I thought that you knew and we're just trying to make it seem like you didn't already do your research on me to be like, hey, by the way, do you already? And meanwhile, he's already watched every single episode and follows us on everything. But no, it was a great guess. And it's just nice to return to it and finally kind of get some of my, what feels like my roots back, because I mean, like I said, I used to work in radio. So kind of makes me feel like a kid again. And man, feel like a kid again in radio. Good Lord, that just made me sound so much older than I actually am. But that's okay. I'll fit right in.
Yeah, there you go, man. And no, we're definitely excited to have you. And it is funny how that came up because, I wasn't playing dumb. I was just dumb. Anyway. So, can't wait to get the tea. Think I'll make it a gym one. Maybe we'll bring it on the show, either post or pre or post gym cut. But anyways,
please, dear God, not post.
I have skinny arms. Don't worry, you won't be intimidated.
No, not even that. Just drenched in sweat.
No.
Can't even read KCH anymore.
Before or after the sleeve monster is attacked it. But, or just flex too hard. But again, very excited to have you as part of the show because I've been the one doing the reels and I do a decent job, but I don't have the creative touch. And to your point, doing it doing it solo is a lot of work with a full-time job and all that. So I'm excited that we have a team. But Paul, anyways, that being said, I'm gonna bring up, obviously, Purple Squirrel. We got to throw them some love. They represent freight agents, freight brokerages, and freight forwarding companies. So if you'd like to earn more, reduce your liability, and grow your career, you should have a chat with Ryan Smith over at Purple Squirrel about becoming an independent agent. So they represent multiple broker and forwarding companies, allowing them to provide you with several career offers. You're not limited to just one or two. They got a bunch. You have options. Let them advocate on your behalf. So their website is below, purplesquirrel.llc. I will put, or I guess now Greyson will put the intake form into the comments, the first comment section on YouTube. So fill it out, start your next step, and you're in your career with Purple Squirrel. So normally I'd say hi to Paul, but again, we're not going to talk about him anymore. I think what we should do instead, yeah, he's dead to us until tomorrow when we need him for our next recording. So I told him that this is your buddy. This is your buddy coming on Wednesday, so you better be here for that. And that one's supposed to be a doozy. However, we sure have a doozy. I use doozy I guess doozy is my word of the week because I threw it up for Abby's episode. But either way, we've got a great guest coming in. Our next guest, he has a very interesting background in trucking with a few different roles and a whole lot of unique experiences that we can't wait to hear about, from OTR dry-van, reefer. He was a DOD contractor, a mail contractor, and even worked for the USPS. So don't worry, I'm not giving it all away. He has a lot to talk about in this arena, and we can't wait. That's one of the reasons we're having him on. And what's interesting, though, is his next move was into media, where he runs his own company called Stealth Mode Media. Greyson, maybe you can take some hits, bud. But anyways, we're amped to have him join us today to talk about all the above and much more. So welcome to the pod, Justin Martin.
Thanks for having me.
So when you hopped on, actually, we talked about a couple things when you hopped on that I do want to bring out. You talked about Matt's, which we want to get into. I'm very upset that I'm not going to Matt's. I go to a lot of shows, but Matt's isn't one of them. I know. I was at TMC. Shout out TMC. So you got to see some cool big trucks, but not like Matt's from what I hear. Tell me, why do you love Matt's?
So, why do you go? Of all the freight conferences and stuff I've been to, either through work or just on my own time, Matt's is by far, hands down, the most driver focused. You got Broker Carrier Summit, all the FreightWaves events. A lot of it's either media or sales focused, or it's more on the broker and carrier side. Whereas the actual person driving the truck, Matt's, the Mid-America Truck Show, is really the only game in town. I think, we had the Texas Truck Show, and I think a lot of the bigger ones have kind of fallen by the wayside over the years. I think COVID really killed a lot of them off, but Matt's is still, Matt's is still hanging in there.
I was actually, I'm happy you brought that up. Actually, I heard that a bit from somebody who plays a big part in Supertech, and I found out he's the one who organizes the whole thing. I can't remember the gentleman's name. That's my bad. You meet a lot of people at a show, but I was like, that must be a fantastic show. And he actually said that there had been some drop off because, I think to your point, the COVID, just the overall market itself, how things are a little uncertain right now. They had some folks back out. So Supertech, where you get to see a lot of stuff that's driver focused and carrier focused, back off a bit. Do you think that's just a temporary thing? You think it's going to stay like that a bit? What do you think, Justin?
And I really think this is the direction it's going, because years ago, the big players at Matt's were all the OEMs. You'd have Peterbilt and Mack, and they were showing off all their brand new trucks and tech and everything. But the cost of renting the square footage space in there was just astronomical. And I guess they crunched the numbers and they're like, we're not getting a return on any of this. And other vendors I talked to, clients of mine, either all saying the same thing. They're just like, we don't make any money going to these shows. It's all, coming out of our pocket. But the hope is that, either through word of mouth or meeting people there, you never know what opportunities, will fall into your lap at events like this. So there is still some benefit for other people, but I think the longer that you're going to these events and upgrading to the bigger, I'll give just an example. An internet connection at Matt's, just a basic 2 megabit connection, is $3,600. Now to go to the 8 megabit connection, which is just barely, or a 6 megabit connection, which is just barely enough to even get a video stream going, it's $6,700 or something crazy. It's just the cost skyrocket. And this isn't Matt's fault. It's the convention center itself. That's right. the people there charge. I'm sure the people running mats would love to, offer free or at least low cost internet connection for, all of the vendors there. But it's just the actual cost of running the show and attending it as, not as an attendee, but like as a vendor there. Exhibitor. Thank you. Had a brain fart.
Teamwork, J-Mart.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's costing people an arm and a leg, and you can see that. You go to the same events a couple years in a row, and you start to notice like, oh, there's less people here this time, or you go to the theater rooms, and there's not as many people, in the seats or whatever. But I think the people every time I go, I have a bigger and better time at all these events I go to. A lot of it is also just due to the fact that it's a lot of the events that happen afterwards. You go to dinner with some people you haven't seen in like 6 months to a year, or at least at Matt's. There's a reefer trailer parked out in the lot that's been converted into a bar on the inside.
Very cool.
You get some guys in there with some music, and Long Haul Paul, he's a country music singer. He gets in there and just riffs on the guitar for a couple hours. It's a good time. That's
awesome. And now, to your point with the internet, I remember we needed an electric hookup at Matt's, and not Matt's, at TMC. And again, this isn't at TMC; it's the place. It was, I think, to get one extension cord, which we had 4 bands of lights and 2 monitors, and they gave us one plug, and it was like $200, like $400. I forget. And I'd never heard that. I'd never seen it. I'm just there as an exhibitor. I don't know what goes into it. So that's wild. Greyson, have you ever been to any shows with KCH or anything like that, or they just keep you chugging away on the memes?
Yeah, they shove me into a closet and they just tell me to be funny, and don't come out until you've got next week's memes ready to go. No, they've sent me to a few, man. They, for some reason, they actually want my face out there. I've been to Manifest a couple times. Oddly enough, even though F3 is literally like across the street from where I live right now, I actually have not been there, but I have made use of the after parties though, which is like, well, if you're gonna do something,
that's nice.
Yeah, so at least they invite me to those things.
Good stuff. Now you're doing a lot of memes, Justin. You call yourself, a meme guy. Chief Meme Officer is the title you have on LinkedIn, I believe. How do you guys come up with like a good meme? Like how does inspiration hit?
At least in the supply chain, it's great because it's a shit show every single. Can we swear on this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
it's a shit show every single day, and that's where like the best kind of memes come from, is just shared misery and like collective problems. You go on Facebook and you look up any kind of blue collar work, whether it's welders, roughneck oil well guys. All those kinds of pages have the best memes, and it's because those jobs are just so fucking hard that the only way to make it through the day is just to laugh through the pain.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
I completely agree with that. I think it's also, you just sort of have to be chronically online, to the point where it almost is like a detriment to your health, because you need to be able to understand all the trends that are going on right now, and what this particular meme is and how to use it. Because the number one rule of the internet, if you're going to be an account that posts any kind of meme, you better use it right. Because if you don't, everyone will jump down your throat. So, but the shared misery part, you got to be able to relate to something, otherwise it's not funny, right? It's not funny to talk about how nice everything is. No, it's fun to talk about how bad things are sometimes. It's our way to vent.
Yeah, and Craig Fuller, my old boss, is always talking about like the freight recovery that's supposed to be around the corner, and that's something you can poke fun at too. Is like everybody is seeing all this capacity exit the market, and like you're seeing green shoots here and there. But the vibe check on the industry as a whole, it just everyone's like, where is this recovery? We're not seeing it yet. So you can play it both ways. You can do as many like we are so back memes every time somebody's talking about fat rips, and then meanwhile next week 20 more trucking companies go bankrupt.
Or you mentioned green shoots. That's funny. So at that show there was the keynote was a economics gal. Great job, very engaging. I'm a bit of a nerd with economics, so I enjoy some macroeconomics. But after the show, my coworker walked up. She's like, she's from North Carolina. She goes, did you hear how many times she said green shoots? I was like, she said it a few. She goes, it was 18. I was like,
counting.
Yeah, she was counting. I was like, so that could be one with like a drinking game, right? Like how it's shot every time they say green shoot.
I need to make like a bingo sheet for all these conferences and just have top of funnel, as a service, green shoots, just buzz, come up with like
wasted.
Yeah. Come up with a dozen buzzwords, and every time you see a presenter on stage do that, you just rubber stamp it.
Gosh.
Yeah, you'd be hammered before you got out of the lobby.
Big reason that we have domiciled is to talk about the drivers. And Justin, you talked about you like to go to Mats because it's about the drivers. Now, you yourself were a driver for 15 years, and you've been in the meme game 3 years. And I gather from the little bit we've chatted that you're pretty strong in the meme game. So I can only imagine what 15 years did for you in trucking, and they say that 10 years is like a career, but I highlighted a bit in the beginning, but walk us through that experience, some from the beginning to what got you out of it. And some highlights, some lowlights, maybe, whatever you want to chat about.
Yeah. So my online history, I've been deep into memes and forums and all that since they pretty much existed, and I got into trucking just kind of by accident. I had a friend lie to me about a job opportunity. He was a cable installer in New York City, working for some cable company. He's making all kinds of money, and I was living in Florida at the time, and so I packed my bags and bought a plane ticket, and then the guy ghosted me, and I was like, what the hell? Found out the guy lied to me. Have never heard back from him since. I haven't even bothered looking him up on Facebook or anything. And so I'd already moved out and was living out of a suitcase, and called my dad, and I was like, I'm kind of screwed. What do you recommend? And he suggested going into trucking, because he and my mom drove team for a couple months with Schneider a few years prior, and he drove solo for Schneider way back in the early 90s after he got out of the Air Force. And even before that, he was driving farm equipment in his younger years on the farm. So I'm not from a long lineage of truckers. Like my great grandmother was a dairy truck hauler, way back in the days. But so I have a little bit of trucking history in my family, but not like a founder or anything like that. So moved to Indiana, got my steel learner's permit there, reapplied at Schneider, and 2 weeks later I was driving a truck in Wisconsin.
You had a few different roles, again, like we mentioned, van, reefer, DOD. Which did you enjoy the most, and which did you enjoy the least, and why?
Definitely the DOD freight, because everything commercial.
Most or worst?
I loved
DOD.
The DOD the most. The reefer was the worst, because with reefer, it's hurry up and wait. You get to a warehouse to get loaded or unloaded, and they waste. Reefer warehouses waste drivers' time more than any other kind of freight out there. They just use your trailer as free storage so they can shift stuff around in the warehouse. It's horrendous. I've never burned up my clock worse than hauling produce. But with military freight, total opposite. There's no rush. Safety above all. We're not armed security or escorts or anything, but there is a panic button in the truck. God forbid something goes wrong. So
no kidding.
Help is always a phone call away if you need it.
And probably 30 seconds too. They come out of a knoll somewhere.
So what actually happens is, say you're some criminal dirtbag and you want to hijack a military truck. Well, here's what's going to happen. The driver's going to push a little shiny red button in his cab, and his cell phone is going to start ringing in about 10 seconds from a call center out of an Air Force base in Chicago. And I've never been there, but the vision I always have in my head is the red Batman phone. Because anytime they're called DITS, DTTS, Defense Trailer Tracking System, I think. And so when you call them, it's never one ring and then pick up immediately. It's usually 3, maybe 4 rings, and then a panic, hello, Sergeant so-and-so, how can I help you? It's some awesome guy panic. But so I always imagine somebody sitting at his desk, seeing the red phone ringing, and then sprinting as fast as he can over to it to answer.
Next thing you know, you got 3 Black Hawk helicopters descending upon this truck, just ready to fire.
Thankfully, never had anything. I've had a couple of rude state troopers try to accost me, and then you get to throw around, my bureaucracy can beat up your bureaucracy, so let's do this.
My red tape's thicker than your red tape.
Oh yeah. We kept I'm not kidding you. There was a 3-ring binder this thick that we kept in the visor console above the cab. And it was for every weigh station or anytime we got pulled over or whatever, there was just permits on top of the exemptions on top of other permits in there. So going into Florida, if you get pulled into a weigh station, they want to check the registration on the trailer, or we would run what they call drum trains. So it's a set of boxes on a flatbed trailer, and every single box would have a separate load. Well, outside the state of Florida, you don't need to have those boxes registered. They're just strapped down onto a trailer. But in Florida, those boxes need to have their own separate trailer registration, except if you're a DoD contractor, which we were. And the trooper that was inside the station just did not believe me at all. I was like, man, I've been here a dozen times. Here's my paperwork. Here's the letter from 4-star General or whoever. Please accept this. And he had to call like 5 different guys above him to tell them, just let them through, man. Stop wasting their time.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. I guess it's a bit of a catch-22, right? Like a total pain for you, but at the same time, it's like you want them to do their job, but to a point.
Yeah, and most of them are understanding. Like when they see a truck pulling into the way station with 1.1 placards on it, it's usually like, oh,
right.
not worth it. So you just get skated by. But that's on the DOT side. Now on the DoD side, you have your own separate roadside inspections that get sprung on you on surprise. Like you'll just be driving 1,000 miles in the middle of nowhere, and your dispatcher will call you and you'll say, hey, there's a white Ford Siesta following behind you, license plate, blah, blah, blah. The driver's name is such and such. The passenger's name is so and so. You're going to pull into the pilot at exit whatever. They're going to check your paperwork, everything on the trailer. And if you pass, the company paid us $100, and then their rating within the DoD like goes up a level.
Very cool. So
like undercover Ford Siesta is for some reason. That's
it'd just be like 2 guys in like some random car. It'd be a minivan, a pickup truck, doesn't matter. They're like incognito. Yeah. And they're good. They're really good. Because I check, you're checking your mirrors, you're making sure nobody's following you. You don't stop for the first couple 100 miles, and I never saw these guys coming. They would just be like over there in the corner.
Why would you be looking for the Ford Siesta? It's not like that's still Team 6 is going to hop out the trunk. But
yeah, and a lot of these guys are like retired military, so this is just a cushy job for them. They love doing it.
They want to hand out the $100.
Well, they don't give them even the $100. My company does.
Imagine they just like slip off 100. Here you go, kid.
Here, this is for you.
It's a great way to throw away your career, is to try and offer guys like that a bribe.
What was the coolest thing you ever moved for the DoD?
Okay, you're not really supposed to ever talk about the actual loads themselves.
If you can't, that's cool.
I knew you were going to say he can tell you, but he'd have to kill you.
So there's an Air Force base in Washington, near Tacoma, and we'd go there probably once or twice a month. Everything routine, no problem. Get loaded, get unloaded, in and out, no problem. We show up one time, and they load 2 pallets wrapped in black shrink wrap onto the trailer, and this colonel comes around the corner. He pulls me and my dad aside, and pulls into this office, and he's got this list just like of all these rules, and you will not deviate from your path. You will make on-time appointment. If there's any issues, please call us. It's just like, if you do not make this load, there is not a name for the hole in the ground that we are going to bury you guys in. And we're both like, what the hell? Like, we've been here before. Like, what's going on? What are we hauling? And he's like, these are the latest and greatest generation of night vision goggles. And if these fall into the enemy hands, this is going to be, just absolutely devastating for our boys on the ground. Because I guess when you're up in a helicopter and you got like the current night vision goggles on, our guys are lit up like Christmas trees. Mm-hmm. So you have immediate friend or foe distinction. So this was in 2012, 2013 when this happened, and made the delivery no problem. Never thought about it years later, until one day I'm watching CNN and there's live video of the Taliban just completely taking over Afghanistan, and they're going through with cameras just recording all the equipment we left behind. And lo and behold, there is just mountains of these night vision goggles, and I'm like, oh my god, they gave us hell for delivering 2 pallets of it. Meanwhile, there's like entire warehouses of this stuff just left overseas. And I'm like, and nobody went to jail. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was fired for any of this stuff. And that is a big issue that I hear from a lot of guys who enlisted, who are like, if I don't fill out this piece of paperwork when I return my rifle after I leave the military service, like I could go to jail. Meanwhile, we left like entire tank battalions over there, and nobody got in trouble for it. Fortunately, a lot of the like really high tech stuff, everything breaks quickly and easily. So the keeping everything maintained is really hard. Like we can leave 1,000 Black Hawk helicopters out there, but they'll get 10 of them off the ground and maybe 3 hours of flight time out of them before they crash and burn.
Especially with the desert, I guess, right?
Yeah, but the real worry is them taking that equipment and then selling it to China or Korea and having that stuff reverse engineered. But being on the inside and seeing how the sausage is made, I think part of the problem is, one, just lack of accountability, and 2, it's not their money. Those are like the 2. those two things together are like a recipe for all kinds of waste, fraud, and abuse.
That makes perfect sense, actually. So I think I do want to come back to the driving stuff a little bit later. And well, Grace, anything before I shift? Anything you wanted to bring up? Any questions?
No, I mean it really just sounds like they had the guys checking your truck on the wrong front lines. Right. I think everything would have got back just fine if they had given them the same crap they gave you.
Should have, would have,
You need them at the checkpoint.
Yeah, no, you should have called up that 4-star or the colonel. Be like, so, sir.
Yeah. Oh, I think about him all the time now. I'm like, what is that guy doing? He needs to be like running Doge, just laying waste to like every kind of corrupt department he can get his hands on.
Oh my gosh, there you go. So you mentioned your dad and you drove team. I want to come back to that, but we started talking about the government a bit, and I know something that you wanted to bring up was the new administration and I'll let you take it from there, but how it relates to trucking and all of that. Love the water bottle stickers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's got a nice little collection there. I think when Trump first got elected, are you guys active at all on Twitter?
No, we need to be.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so Craig Fuller, being the fan of asymmetrical bets that he started putting it out there that he was throwing his hat into the ring for nomination for DOT secretary. I thought he was joking, and he was actually sort of serious about this. So I ran with it too, and I was like, oh yeah, Craig's he's gonna do forget the war on terrorism, he's doing the war on traffic, and half of it was like tongue in cheek, but the other half was like he knew where the weak points in a lot of that bureaucracy are, and a lot of it is most of DOT is made up of bureaucrats from the FAA, because every single time a plane goes down, it makes for just horrific news. The headlines, the imagery, everything is just horrific. Right. And to their credit, the NTSB is really good at dissecting everything about what went wrong and doing the best they can to fix it. Meanwhile, on the highway side, absolutely nothing. 37,000 people per year, every year, die on American roadways. 5,000 of those deaths are attributed to either running into a truck or a truck running into them. So when this new guy, Sean Duffy, was nominated and put into office, that was the first thing I noticed he was constantly tweeting out was FAA. Everything's FAA. The FAA's gone woke. We're gonna Doge the FAA. Everything's FAA. And I'm like,
buzzwords, lots of buzzwords.
I'm like, son of a bitch. It's the FAA all over again. And so I have been making it a point to be as big of a pain in the ass to Sean Duffy on Twitter as possible. So I have post notifications turned on. So every time he posts or replies to something, I get a notification on my phone, and I immediately jump in and I'll reply to whatever topic I'm wanting to throw in there. And my biggest thing right now is in 2016, the Obama administration's FMCSA passed a memorandum to get rid of the enforcement of 49 CFR 391.1. It's the English language proficiency requirement for anyone with a CDL. So if I'm driving a truck and I can't speak or read or write English and I get pulled over and the officer comes up to me and says, hey, let me see your registration and license, whatever, and I can't have a conversation with that guy, I'm shut down. That's been the rule since like the 30s. It's been in place forever. A lot of states don't enforce it, but this was the first time, like on the federal level, the government was like, hey, you see this rule? We're just not gonna, don't worry about it. We're not gonna enforce it. And ever since then, we've seen just a massive flood of immigrant truck drivers and accidents going through the roof.
Sure.
The numbers don't lie. You can have your own opinion about whatever you want on immigration, legal or otherwise, but the numbers aren't lying. Like accidents are up, the rates are down, and there's this other account, American Truckers United, and what they've done is gone into the FMCSA's database and looked up how many CDLs are issued per state per year. And what they realized is, like, they use Florida as was a really good example. Every year, Florida was giving out between 6,000 and 7,000 CDLs. And then around 2020, it was just like this huge spike of like 100,000 CDLs handed out that one year. And then the next year dropped right off a cliff. And my initial gut reaction to that was, well, of course, trucking was super hot that year. Everybody bought a truck and just flooded the market with capacity. That's why the recession's been dragging on. But they looked at other states, and states like Oregon and Minnesota same thing, hundreds of thousands of CDLs, but for 2023 and 2024. And that like kind of raised a red flag to me. Like, okay, no, that doesn't make sense. Like nobody's adding that much capacity when the market is crashing and burning as hard as it was during those 2 years. Yeah. So that's something they've been looking into. And so every time Sean Duffy posts on Twitter now, I'm in the replies immediately with a screenshot of that memorandum and saying like, okay, Sean, I see what you're doing. Awesome for planes and everything. What are you doing for trucking? And they've been doing absolutely nothing. And so I've been doing that for about the last month and a half. And then just as we saw this past week, it's just been horrific on the highways. There was that huge wreck in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. You got trucks blowing over from the high winds.
That was crazy.
Yeah. And none of this stuff is excusable. You have weather app upon weather app now. Reading the road signs, inexcusable. None of these accidents should be happening whatsoever.
Again, which side of the aisle you stand on doesn't matter. What matters is safety and getting things to places safely in an 80,000-pound weapon going 70 miles an hour. That will take out the family of 5 stick figures and everyone else in front of them for a quarter mile. Like it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. And again, seeing a plane go down is horrific and it's scary. And unfortunately, it's what grabs eyeballs. When, again, it's only a handful go down in probably a handful of years, right? Or they go down a little bit more often than we realize, but they decide to point the cameras at it because it's what's going to get us to click and watch in our eyeballs. But yet the number of crashes probably, I don't have the data, probably isn't up.
I do.
Grayson's got the data.
I've got you. I've got you. This is why I'm here. I did a story on this actually. We have a newsletter at KCH that I write every week, and so we actually have a story this week about the English proficiency rule. That's a big word for me. Thank you.
It's funny that you messed that up.
I know. It really is. So yeah, I did a little bit of a story on that. Actually, a lot of the information you just gave, I was not aware of. I took note of that, so I can make sure to put that in there. So I appreciate you, Justin. No problem. But yeah, I did another story on how basically, at least according to the data, plane crashes as a whole are down quite a bit. From this year compared to years prior, and what really kind of makes us all think about it is, wait, there hasn't really been a commercial plane crash since like 2009, I think is what before this year.
Thank God for that.
Exactly, right? But then 2 of them happened within a couple weeks of each other, and so of course everybody's like, and of course with stuff with the FAA happening at the exact same time, it's just this perfect storm of giving really just media outlets what they want to talk about. Media needs news. I mean, CNN's 24 hours. There's not 24 hours of news. So they have to be able to, to fill with things like that. And of course, it always gets the clicks as well. Sensationalism is big when it comes to stuff like that. So even though the numbers say that it's been down, even though the numbers would argue that it hasn't really been all that scary, it still has an effect on people psychologically. I mean, I know definitely people that travel all the time that are like, I've never worried about this, and I know that I shouldn't be, but it's just in the back of my mind whether it should be or not. But people don't have that same thing about truck crashes because they're like, oh, crashes happen every day. It's, a commercial plane crash that happens once every 15 years or so. This is like, oh, well, another truck crash or whatever, and you don't really stop to consider not only just the consequences of the wreck, obviously, but then going back and trying to figure out, well, what caused it, right? And being able to read a road sign is important. And so there are instances where I can see how maybe it gets pushed down a little bit, but there are definitely, people like you and the president of I think it was the Small Business Transportation Coalition. I'm making that, I could be right. I think he's the one that basically helped propose the bill.
SBTC?
Yes, thank you.
No. You want nothing to do with James Lamb.
Okay, fair enough.
No, much of this push has been done by I'm blanking on his last name. His first name is Shannon. He's from Arkansas. He was a trucking executive years ago, and then his company that he worked for went out of business because a lot of the competition they were seeing from these new carriers flooding in, and so he started a new organization called American Truckers United, and their main mission is trying to stop the flood, as he calls it, the wage dumping that we've seen at least on the driver's side of trucking. there's no other industry like this where you can compare it other than maybe like construction or manufacturing. Like a lot of manufacturing got automated. Drivers aren't being automated en masse yet, but a lot of them are being replaced, at least on the smaller carrier side, with immigrants coming from overseas. And I'm not against anyone trying to come here to get a CDL and get a job and everything, but there is a standard, and that standard keeps getting lowered every year, and we've seen the result of that. You can't lower wages and lower standards and lower safety and then not expect, anything horrific on the other side. As I told Sean Duffy, I was like, just imagine if 5,000 Americans died flying every year. Like, what would be the reaction to that at the FAA? And with trucking, they don't care. Business as usual.
Exactly.
With the wages being lowered as well as the regulations, first, with the wages being lowered, that's going to push, because of the cost of living and what we expect as wages as American citizens, that's going to push a lot of American citizens out of that, and will bring in folks who are trying to scrape and get by, and maybe came here from a war-torn country in Central or South America and hoofed it thousands of miles and got here legally or illegally and are just trying to survive, right? And they're going to get into it with the lower, it was regulations, safety training, and the wages. Those are the three things you mentioned. So that's going to increase those types of folks trying to get a CDL or getting a CDL, which is going to make it worse.
Yeah, and it increases the turnover rate too, because new drivers are going to be less safe than experienced drivers, and if nobody's sticking around long enough to get any kind of experience, it's just natural that you're going to have an increase in accidents. The only carrier I ever know of that decided to do away with the whole like CDL mill, and they wanted, so it was JB Hunt back in 2003, I believe it was. They increased their pay by like 20 cents a mile, and it cut their turnover in half.
I believe
which is bonkers.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, "This is amazing." Oh, at least as the drivers, they're like, "This is amazing. We're making all kinds of great money." But what killed it was the other carriers, because when it came time to negotiate new contracts for their lanes, they just got crushed by other carriers because they could run it cheaper than JB Hunt could. So they had to go back to business as usual. And I think until there's like some kind of real, quote unquote, real truck driver shortage, you're never going to see those rates go up. The whole reason why the pay is so low is because we have too many truck drivers, not a shortage.
And I remember always hearing when I was a broker from 14 to 19 about the shortage. And then my last, from April 22 to now, working at Revanova, and not being in that seat anymore, but talking to so many folks and different folks, especially with the podcast, I do truly believe that it isn't a shortage. It's a shortage of tenure, a shortage of knowledge and length of time in the space. So again, maybe the carriers will have to, but it's tough. The carriers are already getting squeezed so hard. It's hard to say, we got to raise the wages, right? Because I think the shippers got to stop being so damn cheap. You had your time. It's time for the brokers and carriers.
Let it out, Scott. Let it out.
when you've gotten used to paying something for so long, anytime the costs go up, everyone bought, like your insurance. Everyone's losing their mind over the insurance being so high. But I mean, that could be a whole different podcast right there. But I think at least with shipping especially, there's just an expectation of like, oh, I just throw out whatever lowball rate I want, and chances are you're going to get somebody that will eventually pick it up as a backhaul or just anything to keep them from running, deadhead. But at the end of the day, you really do get what you pay for. And I hope Amazon isn't a sponsor of this podcast, but I harp on them all the time. Their rates are too low. That's the problem. You go and you search trucking accident or trucking rollover in the news section on Google, and the images are mostly Amazon trucks right now. But it's
because they're everywhere.
It's more insidious than that, because they're Amazon trailers, but they're not Amazon trucks. They're not stupid. They have this structured so that these are outside independent contractors, and so they're not paying the drivers. They're paying the contractor that rate, and then the contractor is who pays the drivers. And that's where my gut check on this was like, okay, I go on YouTube and I look up truck accident body cam footage from police officers, and it's like the same thing over and over again. It's an Amazon truck in a gas station spilling fuel all over the place. They're talking with the drivers. He can't really communicate that well. Then it was like, okay, you have a CDL, but you have a learner's permit, but there's 2 of you in the truck. And so like in the video, I'm watching this, and these aren't like highway patrolmen. These are just like, Wisconsin deputies in some county in the middle of nowhere. But I was like, oh man, if I was there, I would be dropping so much knowledge on these guys, because this is exactly what these guys do. One person drives the truck. The other person is just there to reset the clock. And so you got these guys driving 24/7, tired as hell. And inevitably when something goes wrong, one guy's pulled out, a new guy's plugged in. And then this happens all the time.
Is that a symptom of a particular problem that you can think of, or does it go a little bit deeper than that?
If I were crowned God Emperor of America for a day,
yes,
I would be sending rockets into ATA headquarters in a heartbeat. Because that's where a lot of this comes from, is decades upon decades of lies and industry propaganda, and they're really, really good at it because they've been doing it for so long, and it's such an easy story to believe. If I search, quote, truck driver shortage, end quote, on Twitter, sort by latest, I'll find article after article after article this week of, some journalists from an NBC affiliate just doing their job and writing an article about a truck driver shortage. I'll email that journalist and I'll be like, you got so much wrong. And to their credit, some reply back. There was one 2 years ago. It was an affiliate out of Jacksonville, Florida. And they were posting about a trucking company there that was, their starting pay was $200,000 a month. And they were complaining about a truck driver shortage. And I was like, none of this makes sense. So you read the article, you look up the trucking company. They were a hazmat tanker hauler, and they only hire owner operators, teams, and so that's where those rates are coming from. Now, half of that is in fuel. The other quarter is going to be your insurance. Then you got to split the pay between you and your co-driver. So they got ratioed so hard that the head of their digital department reached out to me personally and was like, okay, we have never had our mentions blown up this hard before. Please tell us what we did wrong. So I did a follow-up interview with the journalist the following week, and they really did the whole oh, we got this all wrong. It's actually turnover. And during that interview process, you sit down for the Zoom meeting, you chit chat for an hour, and then it's 20 minutes of BSing afterwards. And I asked her, I was like, why do all of these articles follow the same formula? It's like, local trucking company A or trucking school is complaining about driver shortage. It's just, they follow the same formula over and over again. And she says a lot of it is, I could spend all the time in the world crafting the most accurate, detailed article possible, but then as soon as it's out of my hands and over into editorial, and then out of editorial and into marketing, the headline gets changed. Sees it? Well, because marketing says
the editing. Oh.
Yeah, because whoever comes up with the headline, they're like, nobody's going to click on this article. They're going to click on this company's paying this much money and nobody wants to work for them. So that's a lot of it is just, it's the media cycle. They're struggling just like any trucking company out there, and they got to be as big, bombastic, and flashy as possible with their headlines. And that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. Plus, when you don't really think about it too long, saying that there is a truck driver shortage just makes sense for a lot of people that don't know the industry. It's well, of course, every truck driver I see is it's an old white guy, and those guys are dying out left and right, and there's not going to be enough to replace them. And it's nah, man, first of all, it takes no time at all to get your CDL. 500,000 of them are handed out every single year nationwide. Oh, wow. So even by the ATA's own number, 80,000 that they've used every year for 20 years, it's just wrong. It's flat out wrong. Yeah. And if I was a dues-paying member, an associate of the ATA, I would be knocking the door down asking for a refund, because the whole point of the ATA is they take your money and then they lobby the federal government to push around initiatives that you want. They've had nothing, absolutely nothing passed in the last 3 years. I think instead what's happened is they've kind of turned into this giant grift golem where whatever the hot topic is.
Hot takes. I love this.
Yeah. Well, I'm meme guy. You gotta come up with the buzzwords. So the trucking shortage was their bread and butter for years and years and years. They could go to any politician and say, please give us a grant so we can train new truck drivers, and the money was flowing. Well, now that's kind of kind of sort of dried up. Their big thing now is truck parking because they're really, I mean, I don't know if I agree with their numbers or not, but they're, at least by the ATA's own numbers, there's one spot for like every 11 trucks on the road.
Yeah,
at least,
that sounds crazy.
Yeah, and that number kind of overlaps with their 80,000 number too. But whether the number itself is real or not, you talk to a lot of guys, and truck parking really is a huge problem out there.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of grants they're pushing for now, is they want truck parking grants. And a lot of local towns and communities, like I'll pick on Florida again. If you own your own truck, you can't even park your truck at your own house anymore.
Isn't that insanity?
Yeah. So I grew up in Palm Beach County most of my life, and little over on the west side of Palm Beach County, you got Loxahatchee and the Acreage. It's basically a giant swamp, and there are hundreds of trucking companies out there. Small guys, agriculture, tree farms, etc. And they park their equipment on their property, no problem. And now the county is saying, "Oh no, you can't do that anymore." It's like, okay, there are tens of thousands of trucks in this county. Where do you want them all? And they're like,
they should put them on the highway. And be just cut like almost like a strike in a way.
Yeah, but even on the turnpike, it's like there's 2 rest areas in the entire county, and there's maybe 20 spots in those rest areas, and they fill up by like 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's a lot to digest. You drop some knowledge on us, and I love it. Greyson's gonna have a field day cutting up some reels.
Oh, this is some spicy stuff right here.
Spicy.
I'm excited.
So I do want to, as we wrap this, I want to swing it back because I'm a bit nostalgic. I'm a softie. I want to hear about the time team driving with your dad. Let's wrap with that.
So I drove for this DoD contractor called Green Valley Transportation out of Tracy, California. If you're looking to get into this kind of freight, hit them up. They're a great company. They're always hiring teams. So I drove with them for 2 years, and the guy that I was driving with, he was a dad of the guy I knew in high school, and I had just moved back to Florida, and it was in the middle of the housing recession, and like nobody was hiring. And I was working at Target at the time, just stocking shelves. And guy messages me on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, I got this company that my dad drives for, and he needs a new co-driver. Are you interested?" So I was like, "Sure." So drove with him for 2 years, and he's civilian, and I'm civilian. And if you got 2 civilians in a truck and you're trying to get on base, it is a pain in the ass because they run your background check. I mean, it's minimum. It's like a half an hour just to get in the truck or get in through the gate, half an hour per truck. So when Charlie left and my dad was trying to get back into driving, he hadn't driven a truck in like 6 years, and nobody would hire him. So I reached out to my company, and I was like, "Hey, my dad's been a truck driver for forever. He can drive circles around me. Do you mind if he drives with me?" And they checked with their insurance company, and they gave us a green light. So sweet. I called my dad back, and I was like, "Hey, you want to come drive with me?" And he's like, "All right." So we drove together for 2 years, and he's retired Air Force, and now getting on base is like instant. You just pull up to the gate, shows his military ID, and they're like, "Oh, welcome back, Master Sergeant. Come on in." So that was fun. It changed the job from just like, "Oh, this is we're hauling cool stuff," but the job itself is still a pain in the ass, to like, this is like the most fun I've ever had behind an 18-wheeler, because no matter where we were, whatever base we were at, we could stay on base in like they have like these hotels on base. They call it TLQ, temporary living quarters. And these are like between 2 to 4 star hotels for like nothing. Like we stayed on base at Quantico one time, and it was a brand new hotel that they built, $30 a night. It was awesome. We're right on the beach. If you're in the military and you're retired, they definitely take care of you. Buy a camper and just go see the country.
Well, the real question is, do they have truck parking?
Well, they do. So they have secure hold. So what we would try to do is the equipment we were using at the time, there was the trailer, and then the truck had a box on the frame itself called a dormitory box. And so if the trailer was loaded, we would just drive on base, park the trailer in secure hold, and then bobtail off base. That sucked because if you had the truck with you, you had to pay the first night at your hotel, and then the company would reimburse you 50% every night after. But if you had a load on the truck and you had to just put the whole truck on base and then take a taxi off base, they paid for the company paid for everything. So every time we got loaded in the Drom box and we were like, okay, we're gonna get there Friday night, they won't unload us until Monday. Perfect. We'll just spend the weekend in Yuma, Arizona.
A long weekend. All right.
That's awesome. Any memory with Pops that sticks out to end on?
our family is kind of spread around all over the U.S. No matter where we are on the map, there's somebody that we know within 200 miles. So every time we were in Indiana, we'd go back and see the old family farm and stuff. That was a lot of fun for me. Is just seeing family and friends that we haven't seen in forever.
Very cool, man. Well, hey, we'll let you end this with any shout outs that you wanted to give and where folks can find you on socials.
I gotta give a shout out to the boys. Reed, Dominic, Billy, Lombard in the group chat, Lombard, and I love Lombard, and Gordon McGill. He's actually the one who very politely and gingerly removed my head from my shoulders and put it back on when I told him that there was a truck driver shortage like 7 years ago.
Oh, that's how you learned.
Oh yeah. I learned very quickly. Gord is he's a good educator.
Beautiful, man. And where can folks find you? I know you're a nice guy.
Yeah, I'm big on Twitter at Supertrucker.
At Supertrucker and LinkedIn as well, which is where I initially found you myself. But hey, Justin, J-Mart, supply chain crisis actor, whatever other aliases that I'm forgetting right now. Supertrucker, right? Of course. How could I forget Supertrucker? You just said it. Anyways, so to the folks listening, please be sure to check us out every other Tuesday at What's Domiciled on YouTube and Spotify for the long form for the whole video, and YouTube and Instagram for the reels. So we really appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you for your support, Greyson. It's awesome to have you as part of the team. Paul, whatever. Like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day.